While many dentists get out of dental school and jump right into work, others end up years into a practice and feel like they're chained to their chair or spinning their wheels. At Duckett Ladd, we've discovered that there are 6 phases of long-term practice success. On this podcast, we'll explore each phase of success and help you on your growth journey.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Dental Momentum Podcast powered by Duckett Ladd Dental CPAs and Advisors. Jared Duckett back at you with my business partner, Bill Ladd. And Bill, how you doing, my friend? We haven't hopped on this in a couple episodes maybe, but back at it. And how you been doing, man?
I'm good, man. It's we took a little hiatus, kind of had to get through a couple of busy patches. We are tax accountants still and still do some of that work, and kept us hopping this year with all the changes. But man, I'm glad to be back. I love doing these. These are a lot of fun. And you know, I missed it. So ready to get going again.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I mean, you know, we'll get on a better frequency or cadence on this, but what we really wanted to start unpacking, we've been working a lot of this behind the scenes, you know, and what we want to do is just kind of get out and share what we've been working on. And I'll just come out and say it, Bill, this dental momentum journey. You know, I'm going to give you kudos here. You're very good at the visionary, right? He's the visionary of our firm, but thinking through things, how we can pull things together and crystallize it and really, you know, share or live out our mission that we're doing. And Bill, you came up with this dental momentum journey that we've been working on for months and months. But just, I guess, first off, before we kind of unpack it to a degree at a high level, and then what we're going to do after this episode is unpack it in detail in multiple episodes, is explain the journey, Bill. Where did that come from? Where did you come up with that, I'm going to say, idea of what this could look like?
So, you know, first of all, I'm going to say with full humility that it's not an earth-shattering idea. It's something that others have formulated, but it's kind of how we look at things. And I started thinking about you and I, Jared, and I started thinking about kind of what we've been through together. And I just realized that at the end of the day, it is this entrepreneurial journey. And I've heard it called, you know, a life cycle or whatever you want to call it. But to us, you know, I realized it was really an entrepreneurial journey, and it had a starting point, and at some point it would have an ending point. And I realized that you know, you and I are at a very specific place along that journey. And you know, as I was kind of thinking through that, I started thinking through, who do we love working with? Well, and what I realized is that we love working with people and clients that are at a certain phase in that journey. And it just got me thinking, man, I would love to be able to have known these people earlier and worked with them and helped them kind of evolve, because, man, you and I both know we've learned a heck of a lot of lessons through our journey and made a ton of mistakes and done some things right. And, you know, anything we could have done to shorten that learning curve would have been gold. So we kind of started formulating the dental momentum journey with the goal of, there's 6 phases we'll get into, but, you know, our goal is to help people, you know, get to where they can graduate to that next phase and ultimately graduate to their next, you know, which may be outside of dentistry, doing something totally different, but they work deliberately towards that. So that's kind of the genesis. That's how it came about. And then we just started crystallizing and really dialing in what each one of those phases meant. And that's where it became much more of a collaborative effort. And it's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, no, it's well said. I mean, this dental momentum journey is specifically to dentists, right? Dental momentum. Yeah. And really it's practice ownership too. You know, a dentist that wants to buy a practice, be an entrepreneur and gain the business side of dentistry and get better. And a lot of people probably think that the first phase is buying your practice, right? It would make sense, but that's not what it is, you know, and there's a lot that needs to be done before you buy the practice. So what I want to do just in this episode, Bill, is kind of just at a very high level. There's 6 phases that we'll go through, and let's just kind of hit a high level on each one. You know, what it is, where that person's at in their journey, in the stage of their career. And then again, in the ones after this, we'll do a deep dive on them. But Bill, just start out. Phase 1 of this journey. Again, phase 1 to phase 6. What does phase 1 look like? Where do people start on practice ownership?
So since we've been working with dentists, we've heard the phrase day one of D1. And, to me, when I start thinking through phase one, to me, that could start day one of D1. And really, when it starts, Jared, is when you realize you have a bit of an entrepreneurial bent, and that, being an employee is not good enough, that you want something more, and you want to take the route of ownership. So really, phase one is anywhere from day one of D1 all the way to an associate, who is contemplating purchases, but you're trying to answer the question, is ownership right for me? And to be 100% honest, it's not right for everybody. Some people are more than happy to have a W-2 employee type relationship where they are very comfortable, they're confident, they know what's expected of them, they like the stability. And in some ways, entrepreneurials can be a risky venture. It is. So it's not for everybody. But if that is you, then the phase one is really designed and built out from our perspective to provide content, products, and services that are going to help you answer that one question, which is ownership right for me? And again, it's not an easy question, and it's not the same for everybody. It's totally suited to taste.
Yeah. So this could be like you said, day one of D1. So, in dental school, could be after you've graduated, maybe going through dental school, you've always thought, no, practice ownership, I don't want it. I don't want any part of it. My goal is to graduate dental school, get out, work as an associate. So you could be an associate that's like, hey, I kind of want to look this a little more. I always wrote it off, right? But now I'm like, man, is practice ownership right for me? So that's phase one. And like we said, what we're doing is we've got products, content, and services specifically in these phases to really help people, graduate along the way, if you will.
And real quick, Jared, I think this is probably one of the biggest lessons you and I learned is it's so easy when you're in school or right when you get out. The last thing you want to do is learn new stuff. You're learning enough on your technical side, but this is really going to force you. This phase one is going to force you to really try to embrace that growth mentality, not just with, your technical skills, but also, understanding the business of dentistry, leadership, things like that. Your moral compass, your moral code, all these kind of things that we think are so important to set you up on that path to ownership, that we think it's worth spending some time on and really understanding that. So, it's going to push people a little bit out of their comfort zone, and that's a good thing.
So say they're in phase one, right? They're trying to answer that question, is practice ownership right for me? And they dive in, their answer is yes. Yeah, practice ownership's right for me. I want to go further. So what's that phase two look like?
So what you think logically that would be is you go, okay, well, let's go find a practice. Well, in our mind, that's actually phase three. And in full disclosure, a lot of people do skip directly to phase three.
Sure.
We feel that a better progression would be to take a step back and hit what we would call phase two, which is really unpacking the single question, what type of practice do I want? And this is something I wish we would have known a long time ago. To us, when we kind of broke out, from larger firms and we were looking at starting or joining a smaller firm, we really never stopped to ask ourselves the question, well, what do I want? And I think that dentists don't realize that, you can vision out what kind of practice you want. What do you want to be doing? Where do you want to be located? Who do you want to work with? All these kind of questions are things that you can really start to conceptualize. And then what's really cool, Jared, is that's when the law of attraction kicks in. And all of a sudden, when you're focused on these qualities, guess what? You'll start to notice those. Those will start to stick out in the crowd. Whereas in the past, if you were just saying, I want to practice, you're going to find the first one because now you're focused on a practice. Well, the first one that pops up is going to feel like it's it. But what this is designed to do is to give you a better filter to understand what do you truly want with your life and what kind of practice would support that. Now, caveat is, and we'll get into this in phase three, is I promise you'll find a practice and it won't click off every box. I mean, that's in a perfect world. But man, what if it clicked off 80 to 90% of them, and all the important ones. That to me is really setting the table to build out a practice and a business and a lifestyle that you absolutely love.
Yeah, and I use the car example a lot. People joke at me because I do this so often, but it's just like the car analogy. A lot of people, most people don't just go, "Hey, let's go to phase 3 and I'm going to go buy a car."
Right.
No, they think, "Oh, I want this new pickup truck, extended cab, all the way down to the color and the accessories," right? And Bill's right. Once you identify what the criteria is, you start noticing them. Like
That's
driving
it.
down the road, right? You're like, "Hey, that's very similar to what I want in a car." Same thing with the dental practice. Phase 2 is you identify what type of practice you want to buy, or it could
Yeah.
be scratch start as well.
That's right.
It totally depends. So phase 2, you've identified it. You said, okay, this is what I want to buy. This is what I want to start. This is what it want to look like. Phase 3, what does
Yeah.
that look like once you move there?
So, we've kind of talked about phase 2, and a lot of times that's the forgotten step. Most people don't stop to think that. So they move right on to phase 3, which is, okay, I have now identified a practice, or I'm in a practice, or I'm going to start a practice. The question now becomes, is this practice right for me? And that question really leans more towards an acquisition. I've identified X practice, and man, I am super pumped because now I'm going to be an owner, and I'm going to be the one kind of calling the shots. And I've always dreamt of this. I've always wanted this. But what we find is all too often, Jared, our dentists don't stop to think, okay, I've got a practice identified here. Is it the right practice? Because we do believe that there is a right practice out there for you. It just may not be the one you're looking at right now. It's just really hard. Let's go back to your car analogy, Jared. Why do you think they have you drive that car home at night, let you keep it? Because once you see it parked in your driveway, man, they want you to visualize it. They want that psychology to kick in where you're thinking, I got to have it. And if I don't get it, somebody else is going to get it right out from underneath me, and it drive you nuts. And I think that's where we find a lot of danger, is that people just jump right in and say, okay, here it is. And it could be an existing practice they're already in. Is it the right practice? Does it make sense? What is it about it that clicks off the boxes we identified in phase 2? And all too often we see that not many of the boxes are checked, but it's good enough. And we think that maybe at that point it's time to step back and say, okay, is good enough at that point?
Yeah. And this is an extremely, extremely crucial phase. I can't overemphasize that enough, because once you buy that practice, let's say we're talking acquisition here, or once you start that practice, a scratch start, it's your baby. I mean,
right.
it's not like, hey, let's go a couple of weeks and date each other and see if this works. It's your baby once you bought it. And you're in for the long haul to a degree. And I don't mean that jokingly, to a degree. So, all right, let's go back. Phase 1 is practice ownership right for me? Yes. Boom, move into phase 2. What do I want in a practice I want to own? What does that look like? Phase 3, I found a practice. Is it the right practice for me? Does it hit all 5 of the criteria? Does it cash flow? Am I going to make the money I want? The list goes on and on and on.
Right.
Boom, I've sealed the deal. I'm talking acquisition here. I bought the practice. I took it down. Now I walk in on the owner and I'm running this practice. Phase 4, what does that look like?
Yeah, and kudos to you, Jared, because you're the one that actually kind of crystallized our mind. A lot of these phases could be separated into milestones. And the first milestone is just getting your mind right and building out and finding that right practice. And that second milestone and the second chunk of phases we're going to be talking about here, that's I own a practice now. And you're right, that's a totally different beast. And the ante is up. And in my opinion, phase 4 is where the rubber hits the road. And phase 4 is if you skipped all other phases, but you put 100% of your focus on getting phase 4 right, you're still going to be light years ahead of most people, because most people skip 1 through 3 anyway. Just to be honest, they go right into phase 4. I want to practice. So phase 4 is how do I set up to scale up? And what I want to say to that, Jared, is don't misinterpret that, because scale can mean different things to different people. I'm not talking about, okay, I want to go out and buy 20 practices. Maybe you do. I don't know. Or maybe scale is I want to scale this thing up where I have a lot of freedom of money, freedom of time, whatever the case may be. So to us, and this is something that, man, if we could go back, 20 years ago or 15, 17, how many years ago that we started, if we could have got this right, I think we'd be light years ahead of where we are, but the silver lining is it's never too late. You can always look at this, but basically what you want to do is go back and say, what foundationally do I need to set up in order to set myself up to take this practice where I want it to go, that's going to support the lifestyle I want? And this can mean any number of things. Again, we're going to go into a deep dive of some of those things, but I'm telling you, this is the one where if you will invest the time to get the foundational stuff right, you are going to save yourself so much headache and so much pain down the road, not just with yourself, with your cash flow, but also with your people. And they're going to, feel a lot more stability if we can get this right. So phase 4, we're going to figure out what foundationally do we need to set up to make sure we're on solid footing so we can move forward into the next phases.
Yeah, the big word there is foundational.
For sure.
And you said it, I just wrote it down here to a degree. You said, how do you set up your practice to set yourself up in order to hit your goals, to keep going along the journey? This is what phase 4 is, setting those foundational principles. And I'm not getting ahead of myself here, but a lot of dentists to a degree, phase 3, they take down a practice. They kind of gloss over phase 4 to a degree and say, okay, I'm in phase 5, I'm trying to run. And it's like, well, you can't run and scale and do what you want because you haven't got a lot of these foundational things. So it might, a lot of people might have to take a step back to a degree and say, hey, let's go back to phase 4 and see if X, Y, Z, A, B, C are in place, because they're not. And therefore, without those in place, it's not allowing you to hit mass, to run at top speed at phase 5.
Yeah.
So,
and I think that's an interesting point, Jared, because we have clients that come to us that are going to feel like they're in phase 5, which we'll get into here in a second. But realistically, maybe bits and pieces are ready for phase 5, but there's still some there's cracks in the foundation that need to get fixed first. And until those are fixed, you're going to consistently feel like you're spinning your wheels. You're kind of chained to that chair. That's probably the pain is the most visceral in phase 4, because we've all been there. You are just wearing every hat imaginable. You can't break away. When you do, your mind's on work, you're frustrated, your people are frustrated. This is the one where when it's broken, you feel it more than any other phase. And again, that's why, Jared, I say phase 4, we love you guys. You have the ability to change so quickly with some foundational concepts, ideas that you won't believe it. And your people won't believe it. So again, if you're feeling that pain, that busyness pain, the frustration, that change to the chair, you're probably stuck in phase 4 in some capacity and need a little help getting out. Yeah.
And I'll tell on ourselves a little bit here. It's the reason we're so passionate. And Bill, you mentioned at the beginning why the journey was created to a degree is because we have kind of gone through the journey as well, kind of bounce back and forth between phases. But I'll tell on ourselves a little bit is, we thought sometimes we were in phase 5, and then after talking to other individuals, we're like, wait a minute, we're missing a couple components here. Maybe need to go back to phase 4 and make sure some of this foundational stuff's in place. So we've gone through this. We know exactly what it feels like.
Absolutely.
All right, Bill, foundational. We got that set up. It's not always going to be perfect, but we got it all set up. We're going to continue to work on it. What does phase 5 look once they transition there?
So now we're good. The house is in order. The bones are right. The bones of the practice feel good. So now we start figuring out, how do I truly dial in this practice to support the lifestyle I want? A way that our good friend, Dr. Michael Abernathy would say this is, how do I optimize my practice? historically, this is where we've always tried to come in and serve our clients. And that was one of the realizations, is a lot of times we jump in trying to help them optimize, and the results, were slow coming because there was foundational problems that weren't being addressed. And so we'd have to kind of back people up, and we'd go and we say, okay, well, let's fix some of these foundational. Let's assume those foundational are good to go. Now we're saying, okay, we've got a good practice. It's got a good foundation. You're making decent money, but I know we can be doing more. And in the past, maybe retirement or your next, which is, we'll get into phase 6, seems like a long way off. Maybe now it's starting to come into focus a little bit more, and you start thinking, I can do this, man. If I could just accelerate some of the cash flow, if I could make this thing a little bit better, that would even make it even come into the rear view mirror, whatever you say, a lot quicker.
For sure.
So phase 5 is coming in, and let's optimize the practice as far as your growth and your profitability. Let's find ways to make it dialed into the point where your take home is going well. The cash flow is coming in, where we're working through tax strategies to make sure you're keeping up as much of as you can, and you're getting ready to graduate into that next phase, which is phase 6.
Yeah, optimize is the key word there in phase 5. And it could be help optimize to make more money, or maybe it's, hey, I only want to work 3 days in the chair and I want to bring in an associate because I want this other quality of life over here. Right. So it could be a lot of different things. Optimize could mean something different for different people. If you have different objectives, going back to phase 4, what's your vision, all that stuff. So it's really just, it's optimizing that practice to what you said, Bill. Create that business, optimize the business to create the lifestyle you want to live. Could be different for everybody.
And so what I will say for these first 5 phases, which is working towards the end game, which we'll get into in phase 6, every phase you're graduating, but even more importantly, the concept is, to be honest, you have to level yourself up as a person, as a business owner, or you're going to get stuck. You'll get stuck at one of these phases and you won't be able to figure out why. And if you have that mindset that you're going to level up and do whatever it takes to get to that next phase, and it's not going to be easy. Each phase brings its own challenges and difficulties. If you're leveling up, then I think you'll find that by the time you get to phase 5, the tweaks are a lot easier. Yeah. The levers to pull are a lot easier. They're a lot more intuitive because you've got this foundational understanding of your business and how it generates cash. Now it's just getting yourself, to the point where you are surrounded by the right people, you got the right board of advisors, and you are spending just as much time working on your business as you are working in it. That's phase 5.
Yeah. So walk through. So let's transition right to phase 6, right? So that they're in that practice, they've got that ideal lifestyle set up, that practice is churning, it's optimized. What's phase 6? How do they transition there?
So phase 6 is moving to your next. And I think that's at the point that most of us honestly start thinking about, what is my legacy? What is the legacy I'm going to leave? And that's not just, family legacy. That's the legacy of the practice that you built for years and years and years. So phase 6 in our mind actually begins right at the tail end of your phase 5, your practice journey, because we are big believers that very few practices are turnkey ready to sell with a drop of a hat. There needs to be a little bit of a runway to make sure that you're getting your house completely in order and you're ready to go. And that's not just financially, but also mentally. This is one of the hardest things we see a lot of people work through, is to transition out of your baby, like you say, something that you may have built from scratch, or you took from where it is there to where it is up here. It's hard to to just walk away from that. So you're really thinking about the legacy you're going to leave as far as the community with your team members. So you need a little bit of runway to make sure it's done right. You want to make sure that you're maximizing the value of that. You're making sure you're going to want to partner with the right person who's going to take your legacy and do it justice. But beyond that, after that point, you do have the liquidation event, you move on. Now, you have hopefully our goal is to get people where they have that ultimate freedom, which is the freedom of time to do what's important to them. What is it they want to do? Some people, it may be investing passively in real estate, or it may be gardening or golfing or whatever, but hopefully you've been working a plan the entire time and you sold your practice and now you've moved on. And our goal is to help you, with tax strategies and other things to make sure that that next is just as enjoyable as you always envision it being.
Yeah. And the cool thing is a lot of people, and no fault of their own, it's just a lot of people get to the end, if you will, and they never really thought of what they're next. And
Right.
that's a really cool thing about how the journey progresses, is that phase 4, we're kind of starting to talk about that, start with the end in mind, right? Stephen Covey says it all the time, or says it all the time. So it's just a perfect way to start thinking about this along the way. And that's the whole benefit of the journey, is that a lot of people just go and they just go and they skip. They skip it. This journey just progresses on itself. And you said, if you look at it, like you could draw a line, if you will, between like phase 3 and phase 4. That's like 1, 2, and 3 before practice ownership.
Yep.
Phase 4 and 5, you own the practice. And then phase 6, that's your next. It's after practice ownership.
Yeah.
So you
or
can
the tail end of practice.
That's right.
Exactly right.
That's right.
Yeah.
So we just wanted this quick episode here, and we're gonna dive into each of these, because if you're listening out there, you're probably like, maybe you're in phase 1, 2, and 3, and you're like, well, where am I really at? And you can blend over, into different phases, and maybe you're out there as a practice owner right now, and you're like, okay, I'm in phase 4 or 5, but what do you mean foundational? Like foundational is phase 4. What foundational things do I need in place, or what foundational things do you guys help with? And that's where in each of these episodes, we're going to do 6 episodes following this one. We're going to do deep dive into each phase and go in and out, what that person looks like in that phase, the struggles they have, how we can help, all that kind of stuff, if that makes sense. So Bill, I appreciate you taking the time to unpack it. I think it's a brilliant idea. I think it's a great visual, and I'm extremely passionate. I know about you are too, because we've been there. We're in the middle of the journey.
Right.
For
sure.
I mean, we're in the middle of this entrepreneurial journey. Every entrepreneur is.
That's it. And speaking of bleeding, sometimes we feel like we're as dialed in as they come, and then you kind of get hit upside the head with, by talking to somebody that has been there, done that. And some of these strategic partners, they just kind of knock you back down. You realize, okay, maybe I have a little bit more foundational stuff, and that's okay. It's that self-awareness and always trying to improve and get better. It's going to graduate you from phase 1 all the way up to phase 6. And as you get more and more dialed in, that phase 6 becomes more and more clear. And that's a great feeling.
Yeah, that's awesome. Bill, appreciate you as always. You guys out there that are listening, again, hang on to this episode. SSR, right? Subscribe to the channel if you haven't. Share this with somebody that you think might be like, wow, that journey concept, this is awesome. They really need to listen to the next 6. Share this with somebody out there. Again, rate it and leave a review for us as always. We appreciate you guys. I'm excited to be able to dive into these next 6. I mean, I think it's a lot of cool info and a lot of great concept here that we can unpack. So we'll let you guys go. Bill, we'll see you next time, my friend.
Sounds good. Thank you.
All right, we'll see you.